I'm just beginning to get familiar with Ascension, the deck building game. Now, this is a game that's become quite influential and quite popular, and I want to take you through my first playthrough against a difficult AI here on Legendary Tactics. So I thought I would try my first game here against a hard AI. It's something that I've been gone through the tutorial and doing some reading on the game and so forth. It seems very, very similar to games like Star Realms, like Shards of Infinity. So I'm feeling relatively confident that I can figure out things well enough to beat the AI. Again, I've always viewed the AIs in any of these games as training tools, just to give you the opportunity to practice on your own and to give you the opportunity to hone your skills to the point where you would be competitive in real life against a real player. And I think that has some value. Now, with a lot of these games, it's about making a very efficient deck. You don't want to necessarily clog your deck with a lot of low-cost cards, as they generally have a lesser effect. So I'm always happy to pick cards that in this game that banish cards from my discard pile as a way to prune down my deck and make it more efficient. The bot here looks like it's buying the most expensive cards on the table. I haven't had a lot of opportunities to buy any great cards, but I'm going to pick up the Avatar Golem here. I'm kind of deciding between the Spike Vixen and the Heavy Infantry. I actually ended up going with that because I picked up an Avatar Golem before and wasn't too impressed with its ability. Now, it's not to say that its ability is bad. I'm still at an early stage and not able to judge the interactions of the cards and the synergies that way. In general, the way these games tend to work is that if cards are of the same suit, the same color, they tend to interact much more directly. Now, that isn't always the case, but it certainly is usually the case that there's some sort of interaction between cards of the same suit. So far, I really do like the blue suit. They tend to have a lot of card draw, which I'm always a big fan of in these games, mainly because it just gives you more options. The more cards you have cycling through, and the faster you can cycle through your deck, the more likely you are going to get to your best cards quickly. So I'm going to take out one of the methods there in the card row. And I'm going to banish that card, mainly for no reason at all. I don't know whether that's something that's actually going to help or hinder me, but I figured I'm not going to build with that suit, so if my opponent decides to, I may as well get rid of it. And again, in these games, it's all about the interactions, the synergies. By the time you reach the end of the game, you should have combo after combo just fire, especially with card draws and all that. It's one of the really fun parts of Star Realms that really I got addicted to was the fact you could chain all these different combinations together, and it was just really fun to do that. So I'm kind of looking forward to how this game works here. The other thing in these games, I find the constructs are generally great to have because they give you that passive input. They are also something which, in this game, because there's no direct attack. I mean, there are cards that get rid of constructs, but it seems to me that the constructs might be a little bit more long-lasting in general, especially in a two-player game. Your constructs might stick around for a nice long while, which is great. Not a lot of options there, so. I didn't actually have my cards were not that amazing in this game, or at least I never seemed to get a lot of synergy together. But I did pick up some cards that enabled me to banish the weaker cards from my deck, and you can see me doing this here. I like getting rid of the militias early. That's carried over from Star Realms. And that's something that's very counterintuitive to a newer player. I'm going to use the strength here to take out this corrosive widow. I think I'm just, or no, I actually decided on the other one. Anyway, one of the counterintuitive parts of this type of game is that there are some cards that banish cards from your discard pile or your hand. And I think for newer players, that can be very, it seems very confusing, where they feel like, well, why am I throwing away a perfectly good card? This doesn't seem like a benefit. It seems like a penalty. But in fact, you want to create a very streamlined deck, as I said. You want to make sure that you have the basically, ideally, a deck of only your most powerful cards, because every hand you pick up is going to be a strong play. It's going to cycle faster through. If you've got a lot of apprentices, or, and weaker cards, especially if you load up on some of the weaker cards, then you're just not going to get to the cards you need when you early enough. It's going to take too much time to get to the good cards in your deck. Now, that said, my first impression of this is actually that things are quite balanced. I like the heavy infantry and the mystic. They seem reasonably priced, especially when you've got a board that's fairly expensive, like the one I'm looking at right now. But I think it's great to have a heavy infantry or two and a mystic or two, especially if you can banish the apprentices and so forth and the militia from your deck. I'm quite happy to replace the apprentices with mystics and so forth. I think that is not a bad idea. However, that said, in general, you're probably better off with buying a card from the middle row if there is one available, simply because they have more extra abilities, even if it's one that you don't see as being tremendously useful or interesting. It's sometimes they pay off down the road, even in unpredictable ways. Now, there is one suit, the brown suit here is the one that I don't really gel with right off the bat. I can see that there's opportunities there, especially with constructs and so forth, to really compound. It seems to me that's the suit that is the one that, if you're focused on constructs, that's the one to go for. I'm just a big fan of any card draw, especially, or that kind of thing. I just find that that's something that you can never go wrong with. Just anytime you can accelerate your card draw, gives you a little boost, as it did here. Suddenly, before I wasn't able to afford any of the cards on the middle row, now I can afford a fairly powerful card because of that card draw. It gave me an extra room. So, and as you can see, the scores so far, reasonably close. I feel I'm doing fairly well. I'm four points ahead in the initial scoring here, and I feel like I've gotten some decent cards. But critically, the AI has purchased a lot of high cost cards, so who knows? There may be a strategy in that. The game itself is fairly quick playing. You can see, in my experience so far, and it's very little. I played one 4-player game before this. This is my first against another AI. But it seems like around this time, around 12 or so, is when the game really begins to wind down. Now, one initial impression that I have, and I'm going to play this game a lot more, is that it seems like if it may be kind of hard to catch up, especially in a 2-player game, if you do fall behind by a fairly significant amount. There just may not be much you can do to catch up and win. Shards of Infinity had that one card that if you got enough mastery, you could end the game and win, and I like that as a kind of a catch-up mechanic. I don't see the same thing here. I imagine if you either gamble on a certain strategy or just make some bad purchases, it's going to haunt you for the rest of the game and you may not be able to come back. I might be wrong in that. It's just the vibe that I get, but assuming two equally skilled players, I think that it's probably fine. I get one more move here, and I'm feeling pretty good, pretty in control. I've got a lot of power and some runes, but at least I can pick up 4 victory points from the cultists, and although Samael's tricksters just appeared. The cultist idea is great. I love the idea that if you have 1 power or 1 rune, it's useless, so you have to spend appropriately. Lots of like little touches that I really appreciate. I think it's just a little subtlety to the gameplay. And so we're going to check the scores, and I managed to eke out the win. It was a little bit closer than I'd anticipated. I know I'd picked up a lot of cards on that initial scoring, but the AI did fairly well. So I managed to pull out a win in my first game against the hard AI. But anyway, I hope I was able to share some useful strategies and you got something from my first impressions. Thank you so much for watching. This is Legendary Tactics.